Hi guys, welcome to Go Tutorial Part 16. My name is Tensor from the Tensor Programming blog, and today we are going to implement a search handler into our web application. So we want to be able to let the user click into a search box, type in the name of a page, and then search for that page. So this is something that we're going to add to our templates. We're going to put it inside of our Navbar. So to get started, we're going to just map out where we want our HTTP handler to be. So we're going to create a handle func. And we're just going to say search. So this is just going to be a post. So we'll just say okay, search, and we'll say check UUID, and our function name is going to be search. So right now, as you can see, it's throwing an error because it doesn't exist. So let's create that function. So let's go right here. And our search is going to take in an HTTP response writer. So it's going to take in the same form as a normal handler func. So there we go. We've got our HTTP response writer and our HTTP request. And the first thing we want to do is get the form value. So our form value, we're going to call it sValue. And we're going to set that equal to our r.form value. And our form value is just going to be search. So this will bring in a string. And then we want to create a function that will go into our database and actually pull out the page. So we're going to say if, and we're going to create a function called pageExists, and we're going to pass in sValue. We'll say if it is true, so if it comes back with a boolean of true, then we are going to redirect to the page that we've brought out. So we're going to redirect there by just concatenating the sValue onto the page. So we're going to say test, and then we're going to concatenate it with sValue. We're going to redirect there with a 302. We're also going to throw in a return statement so that we don't get any header errors. Finally, if we do not find a value in here, so we're going to call our render function. We're going to render a template called search, and then we are going to input a new page variable in here with a title, and that title will be equal to our sValue. So that's pretty simple. As you can see, this is a post handler for the most part, except for the bottom part, which renders a search function. So now we need to create this pageExists function inside of our data.go file. Alright, so our function is called pageExists. And it's just going to input a title string, and we're going to throw back a boolean and an error. As with all of our database functions, we're going to start by opening our database, and then we're going to throw out our defer closed. Then we want to create two variables, so one called PT, which stands for page title, and it's going to be of type string, and one called PB, which is called page body, and it's a slice of bytes. And then we're going to make our query. As you can see here, we're going to select the title and body from our pages table, where the title is equal to the title that we're bringing in through our function here. And then we're going to order it by timestamp and make sure that we only limit it to 1. We're going to run some standard error testing here, so if the error is not equal to nil, we're going to throw back false for our boolean and the error. Then we are going to iterate through our page. Even though we're only bringing back one page, we need to iterate through it. So q.next, and then we're just going to q.scan, and we're going to input the pointer for PT and the pointer for PB. And this will allow us to read the variables. And then we're just going to check and see if PT does not equal to an empty string and PB is not equal to nil, then we want to return true and nil. So nil is our error, true is our boolean. Otherwise, we're just going to return false and nil. So basically what this function is doing is we are going to take our title, and if we get a query back, we're going to run those values that we brought back from the query, make sure both of them are populated with something, and if they are, then we're going to send back true. If they aren't, we send back false, and if we get an error, we send back false and that error. So we're not going to deal with the error in this if statement, so we're just saying if B, which in this case, I just like to use B because it stands for boolean in my mind. You can use whatever you want if it makes it more clear. You know, we get our value coming back as true, then we go to that page. If it comes back as false, then we render our search page. So now we need to create our search template. So here is our search template. As you can see, it's very simple. We're just defining a template called search, and we're importing our header and our navbar. Now we'll get to that in a moment. And we're going to import our footer. We're just creating a Jumbotron here, so a div. And then we're using an H3, and we're just saying title does not exist. And then we have a link that says click here to create a new page. And if you click on the new page, it'll go to our create HTTP area. Next, because of our navbar here, we want to actually take our navbar out of our other templates and make its own template. So here we go. Here's a navbar.html file. And as you can see in here, we have our navbar. So we've changed it though. So what we're doing here is we have a navbar, and the navbar brings in the page title, so the page title will be in the corner. And then we have a link to our home, so this will bring us back to our example. Then we have a link to our create page, so this will allow people to create a page. A link to upload, and this is our upload. And then most importantly, here is our form. And this is our form for our search post. So as you can see here, it says method of post action search. And inside of this form, we have a input box where we can just type in the page name, and then we have a button where you can click submit. And all of this will be inside of the navbar, so it'll look kind of nice. You know, we're just using Bootstrap to do that. However, because of the way that we're bringing in our title here, if we do not have a title, this is actually going to not render correctly. So what we need to do is we need to actually create multiple different navbars in some of our other files. So here's our create file, and as you can see, we used to have our navbar here. I just removed it. So this is to create a page. Now the thing is when we're in this create file, we do not have an actual page name. So if we just bring in our navbar as we have it here, it will actually not render. So let's copy all of this and go into our create, paste it in, and then we want to change this title, and we just want to manually enter create, and we want to change the name of the navbar. So we're just going to call this navbar create, and we need to of course change it up here. So this will call on the correct template when we go to the create page, and everything will be pretty consistent except for this will change. This is something that we can streamline later down the line, but for now this is how we're going to do it. So we also need to do this for our internal page. So as you can see here, we have navbar internal, and the only difference is the example page text. And the other place that we need to put it is inside of our upload. So here you go. We have our navbar upload. As you can see, it says title. We just change this to upload. Let's just say upload a file. So this will all work out correctly, and it will actually render. So finally, the two cases where we are going to import our navbar.html navbar is in edit. So as you can see here, we're just importing navbar, and we've removed the block navbar that we had down here. And in test, we're importing navbar again, and we removed the block navbar that we had down here. So now let's run this. Alright, so let's sign up. Let's create a new user. We're just going to call it Tensor, and let's just say Jackie Doe. And let's make these uppercases. And our email will be test@test.com. Password. Okay, so there's our passwords. So let's just log in. And there we go. So here we are. Welcome. And as you can see, here's our navbar. So let's search out a page. We know that we have two pages thus far. One's called test with a lowercase t, and there you go. We went directly to our test page. We can also go directly to our edit page with a lowercase e. If we put in uppercase T, and the reason that worked is because of something else I did. So let's actually go back and delete our database. So we're going to log out, and we're going to delete our database, and I'm going to show you a potential problem that we will run into here, and then how we can correct it. Now we're removing our database. Now this is something you should probably do every single time you change your file or your program, is remove the database so that you can test everything. So now if we rerun our program, we now need to create a new user again. So this time we'll create a new tensor name with an uppercase T, and it'll be John Doe, and the email will be the same, and the password will be simple again. And let's log in, and there we go. So we can go to our create page, our upload page, and we can go back home. If we look for test, we will not find it. If we look for edit, we will not find it. Now the reason this is because it's not looking for the actual tests from the file that we have. So what we can do is we can actually go and we can edit the file, and then save it, and now it's loaded into our database. And we'll do the same for edit. So we edit it, save it, now it's in our database. And finally, let's do it for view, and this is the page that we created in our last tutorial. And if we save it, it will now be in our database. So now if we type in test, lowercase, it'll bring us to test, but if we type in uppercase test, it will say it doesn't exist. So we want to have consistency here. So we want basically for our title to be saved as an uppercase in our file. Also, we can't handle titles just yet that have spaces in them, and this is something that we will deal with in another tutorial later. So for now, we just want to make sure that when we input our title into our database, that title will then be uppercase. And we can do this with a function called strings.title, and this is a built-in function in our strings library here. So the way we want to do it is in our save function. So when we save our title here, we want to save that title as an uppercase, so we're going to call the strings.title on our title here. So now that will save it as uppercase. Then if we go down to our create page and we call strings.title on our title here, this will also make our title uppercase. If we now go into our and delete our database again, let's run our program. If we reload, it needs us to log in, so we need to sign up again. Alright, so now we've logged in, and if we type in test, it will not find test. So let's save our tests. So test, and let's edit it and save it. So now if we go to capital TSTST, it will actually show up. If we go to under lowercase, it will not show up. So we need to change this yet again. So now to make everything even more consistent, we just make sure that our S value will be capital. So when it gets passed into our page exist, we want to capitalize it. So all we have to do here is call strings.title on our S value as we pass it in here. And let's do the same thing here. That way our titles will always be capital. Again, we delete our database, rerun our file, re-sign up. Now if we save our pages again, if we type in test with a capital T, it'll find it. If we type in test with a lowercase t, it'll find it. We type in edit with a lowercase e, it will find it, and we type in edit with an uppercase e, it will find it as well. So now no matter what we type in, it will find the correct page. And we can do the same for view as well. Let's actually enter it into our database. So now if we look at it, it will find it both as uppercase and lowercase. So this helps make more consistency in our application. And if we create a new title, for example, and we put in a lowercase letter, say Go is a cool language, and let's save this. If we look for it as an uppercase Go, it will find it. So let's take a quick look at our database. As you can see here, we have 4 pages: test, edit, view, and Go. All of them are uppercase, so that successfully worked, and they have all the bodies of text that you would expect inside of them. Alright guys, so that's the end of this tutorial. In the next tutorials we will be dealing with some of the things that we talked about. For example, we will add the ability to deal with multi-line titles by changing spaces into dashes instead, so that they can actually be rendered in HTTP. Also, just keep in mind that when you create a search module in any kind of web app, typically you want to do it with some kind of front-end technology. So if I was to do this again, usually I wouldn't use Go. Instead I'd use something like Elm or React or ClojureScript, so that I could add a few more features that you can't get from the backend. And all I'd have to do is expose parts of the database to the front-end components so that it would work correctly. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, feel free to subscribe, like the video, and if you have any questions, of course, feel free to comment. If you dislike the video, then of course, by all means, feel free to downvote it as much as you want, and bitch about it as much as you want in the comment section. Alright, I hope you guys have a good night.